This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to episode 189 of a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda, and today's sponsor is Private Internet Access. You can find out more about Private Internet Access by going to geekleader.com/VPN. So what do I talk about Private Internet Access? Well, Private Internet Access has a service of global VPNs that allow you to connect many different devices to their VPN, which will mask where you're coming from on the internet. So why do you say you want to do that? I'm not a criminal. I don't want to do that. But it adds a layer of protection. So if you are traveling and you want to connect somewhere, you're at the mercy of the Wi-Fi of wherever you're located. If you're going to connect, maybe you're on vacation or you're traveling for holidays, you're at a family's house, you can protect where you're coming from by using Private Internet Access. You can also test out the internet from different places. So many of us have jobs where we're building websites, we're developing software, or we want to test out bandwidth of what it's like to connect from, let's say, California or from the UK or from Brazil. You can do all that with Private Internet Access, and you can get a discount today by going to geekleader.com/VPN. All right, Geek Leaders. Today on the show, I've got Ming-Hui Huang, and she is a PhD for starters, but also the author of a book that I've got in front of me called The Feeling Economy, How Artificial Intelligence is Creating an Era of Empathy. And it's all about kind of the economy that comes out of artificial intelligence. And I know we've got a lot of AI geeks out here, some developers in AI that are listening to the podcast. So hopefully we can get some insight of the impact of this and the work that we're doing. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about kind of your background, how you got to where you are today, and what encouraged you to learn more about artificial intelligence and put that as a core focus of your research.
Artificial intelligence is a big deal in Taiwan because Taiwan has a very strong IT industry. But most of the people really look at AI as technology only. But I look at that from the management perspective and from the economic perspective. So it's not just look at AI technology itself, but look, instead I focus more on AI's economic impact. And also because I work in Taiwan and from National Taiwan University, which is the top university in the worldwide. And I'm in the information management department. So I do have a long background history in the IT industry, in the IT education. And my observation about AI, I really feel people focus too much on technology part. And also, especially people really think AI is a superpower thinking machine because now we can have AI do anything, do all the data collection and analysis for us. So we just think people just think AI will become smarter and smarter in terms of its capability to think, to calculate, to compute. And I don't think that is wrong. I think that is incorrect because by definition, AI, artificial intelligence, we tend to forget about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence means artificial means the machine, it's computing machine. Intelligence, we want to design and develop artificial machines to have human intelligence. Actually, that's the meaning. That's the meaning of artificial intelligence, and we tend to forget about that. But look at humans. We have IQ test, we have EQ test. But traditionally, we really focus, especially in our formal education system, we just think about if you are so good at mathematics, if you are so good at technology, I'm happy that I'm in the right track. If you're good at all these, then you are smarter than those who really can understand other people's pain, those who understand psychology, but may not be so good at mathematics, engineering. So you can think that we really think IQ is the only thing. And we want to develop AI to mimic human intelligence. But actually what we mean is thinking intelligence. That is not right. So I propose the breakthrough that really received wide attention is to propose a multiple AI intelligence view. That view consider that
in the book you talk about mechanical AI and thinking AI and feeling AI and things like that.
Yes, that's the original part. Very original, and people love it. Even the National Science Foundation, their white book really cited our paper because of that view, and that view really shows that you need to design you need to design AI, not just for thinking intelligence, but also for feeling intelligence. And then they may involve different approaches to develop AI. Maybe the similar approach, maybe different approach. We don't know yet because AI is not really very feeling intelligent yet. But that is the breakthrough. AI, we should design AI to be able to think, to do, to think, and to feel. And currently we have AI that really can do and think very well, but feel part, not yet. So I think that's how we started.
So how do you like? I know when AI was first, I don't want to say first, but becoming more popularized, where you could get AI as a service and run calculations through it. There was always this pushback that said, "Well, AI won't be able to be creative. AI can't make ads, they can't make graphics." But how have you seen your research kind of maybe prove that right or wrong?
I think it depends on what do you want AI to do. If you want AI to, as I would say, as a creativity entity, it means you want AI to be a creative person. Then AI is not there yet. AI cannot be creative. But if you just want to use AI to help humans to be creative, that is, use AI as a creativity tool, then that is great. AI really can do that. Nowadays, people really want to push far enough to see whether AI can be creative. That is, AI can be creative, can draw the painting and create the music. So far, these attempts are not very successful. I even received a painting, AI painting, from a birthday this year, and it looks just awful. But I cannot tell to the person who sent me the gift. But if you use AI, for example, in the fashion industry, they use AI to help them to design the fashion. That has been used very successfully. Help human to be creative currently is the major way to consider whether can be creative. But if you want AI to be the creator itself, we are not there yet because that's because being creative require intuition, require common sense. And AI, those are the bottlenecks of AI currently.
Do you think it's going to get there?
I think we are going to get there. But I like to use one example in the book. That's the example in the book that I use. But if AI say, AI is very good at analyzing text. And so if you say, oh, the girl is a knockout. Actually, the first time when people said that to me, oh, the girl is a knockout, my first reaction was, because I'm not a native speaker, I would say, why do you want to knock that girl out? And then they only realized that does not mean, just mean the girl is very attractive, very beautiful. And AI has the similar problems. Anything out of context, anything that is really culturally heavy, is difficult for AI to understand. So that is what AI scientists is trying to do. They try to make AI has common sense, has intuition. We can see progress there, but still, if you want to apply that to the real business world, it's still not very successful. But help people to be creative, can have great use for AI.
Yeah, I've seen the same thing. I went to a conference. It's been a little over a year and a half ago, where they were demoing like the ability to run an entire movie through an AI engine, and it would create a promo off of that movie, or like a trailer for that movie. And when you watch it, it's like, yeah, the trailer doesn't make any sense. Like, it's just all the active parts of the movie, all the super action scenes. It just throws it together, and it's like, okay, I can see that they're able to detect things and able to cut the video and put it together, but it's not really making sense yet. We're not quite there yet. It needs a human interaction. But I
Yes,
think it'd be
that's
a
the very
great
good.
way to like, instead of having a human have to watch 2.5 hours worth of a movie, that the AI can give it like, here's 30 minutes of things that you can pull from, really assist the human into that field. I think that's where it's at today.
Yeah, but if you just do it 100%, then you will see AI could put together all these very so-called selling points, put all the selling points together in a not very sensible way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't evoke emotion. It doesn't make you like feel. Sometimes you watch a trailer to a movie and you feel like, oh, that's so sad, I want to watch that movie, or that's exciting. You don't get that from the automated tools just yet.
Yeah, so sometimes you can see that AI can help you to put all these pieces together. No, pull out all these useful pieces, and it's humans who have to put all these together in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
I always also like to use an example that is Lexus. Lexus cars, in 2018, they have a TV commercial that is considered is totally 100% scripted by AI. And what AI do is we feed AI with past 15 years award-winning commercials, and then AI can do their mining. They recognize what kind of components will sell. This for like human hugging, tears, suspension. So AI can put all these things together. And in the end, they consider this is 100% TV commercial produced by AI. And from our point of view, and it's the same as the example you just mentioned, it's not strategic.
Mm-hmm.
Can that kind of AI steal cars? We have a big question mark. So that is the intuition, and the intuition strategic part. That is part is the human part, not the AI part. And the AI is good at analytical data part. So last always in the book, we also consider that's so-called AI human collaboration based on their respective strengths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're hitting the key ports there. Is it's got to be collaborative. You know, there's some. Have you ever heard of Stitch Fix?
No.
The company Stitch Fix. So they're a company where you can subscribe and they will ship you clothes, you know, like a box of clothes, and you choose what you like and what you don't like, and you ship back the things you don't like. And I was talking to some developers there on a previous show, and they mentioned that they use AI to help reduce the number of options for their stylists. They have stylists on hand, so like each person that subscribes to Stitch Fix gets a stylist that helps pick out their clothes. And at the very beginning of the subscription, the stylist is doing all the work, picking out everything from just seeing what the person likes, reading their reviews and their comments, and picking it out. And then as the customer has been there for, let's say, a year, and they've gotten 12 boxes because they maybe get one a month, AI will then say, here are the top 10 selections, pick 5 of these, so that the person doesn't have to spend as much time going through and picking, because the AI's kind of narrowed down that field based off things that they know the person's going to hate because they've always said they hated this one thing, or they know they're going to really love this because they've always loved this one thing. So they kind of narrow it down, but then the person makes the final selection. And every now and then you'll see that you'll get a box from them that's not very good and it's really bad. And you say, no, this is a really bad box. I'm shipping it all back. And then they'll have a personal interaction come back to you and say, look, we're going to expand your selection. We're going to help you out, spend more time with your thing, and kind of reset some of the AI model. So I think it's that assistive part that really makes sense. And I think companies like Stitch Fix are probably working on how can we, toe that line to what's the most AI, what's the most bang we can get for our buck for using AI versus, still having that human interaction.
Yes, and then that case also have very good consumer implications. I often told my audience and students that then AI do that for you. Pick up the materials, pick up what would be potentially interesting to you. That is, we call it personalization. Let AI do it, because in the early days, a lot of consumers were concerned about that because they don't want to reveal their preference to AI. They don't want to reveal their preference to the e-commerce vendors. But if you let AI do that, you don't have to let AI to make a decision for you, because AI is good at analyzing data. So that AI pick up those pieces in your example. Pick up those pieces for you, and then you simply say yes or no. Isn't that making that kind of decision, informed decision, is much easier?
Mm-hmm.
And then don't hide your preference, because people very often, because they are concerned about privacy. And so when the company send all these samples, pieces to them, and for them to make their decisions, sometimes people, especially if it's online, it's easy. You will try to hide your real preference. Yes, then it's a trade-off. The more you hide, the less relevant recommendation you're going to get. And then the more you reveal your preference, then you can get more relevant recommendations. Then that really will make your life and decision easier. It's a trade-off. It's based on how willing you are, how you are going to reveal your preference. But my suggestion is always try to understand the true benefit of personalization, so that you can weigh which side is more important to you.
So let's get into the economic side of it, because that's kind of a big part of what this book's about. How do you see, and your research show that the economy is going to be affected by artificial intelligence in the next 5-10 years?
And actually, we are even not only in the book. Now we have very big projects ongoing along the line. But what amazing part that we have published that one already about the feeding economy with U.S. data, U.S. government data. If you don't look, if you forget about there can be multiple AI intelligences or multiple human intelligence. That is, some people are good at thinking intelligence, some people are good at feeling intelligence. Then you won't see the real impact of AI on our economy. If you just look at overall AI as a supercomputing machine. And we, based on the real data, we are able to show by separating AI intelligence and the job intelligence into the three levels: mechanical intelligence, thinking intelligence, and feeling intelligence. We are able to show that actually in the past 10 years, or it's from 2006 to 2016, and we believe from 2016 to now, the progress toward the feeling intelligence will be even more manifest. But even for the period from 2006 to 2016, we showed that the growth of the feeling intelligence outpassed the growth of the thinking intelligence, and not to mention the mechanical intelligence that's already in the past. So it really shows that people need to pay more attention to develop their feeling intelligence, their feeling skills, because the entire economy, because AI as a thinking machine really is pushing us into the feeling side. That's why we call the book the feeling economy. That's because the AI is so good at thinking. So it pushes human into the feeling part.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of those skills that are in that feeling? Is that the EQ stuff? And for anybody that's maybe not aware of that, what are some of those skills that fall into that?
Many the people skills and the empathy,
mm-hmm.
and the interaction, communication, and even experience, service experience, and the capability to interact with other people appropriately, being empathetic. I always like to be, I love to use the empathy as an example, because that's why we put that on the title. I often feel that there's a gender difference here. For many, I don't want to say most, but based on the stereotype, but very often it's also the truth. Men tend to be less empathetic than female. And so since I'm in the IT part of the world, I have to encounter interaction and interact with males all the time. And I have to realize, I have to remind myself that a lot of males really have no sympathy. You may object to it, but that's my personal experience.
That's something that I definitely have to consciously think about, and try to put myself in other people's shoes in order to have empathy, and it's really difficult for me to see things from someone else's perspective.
So I always say that I want people to begin to develop a empathy plug. As soon as I plug into your ear or into your nose or wherever, then you become very empathetic. That will be an AI part that has great potential. But I think that's the skill we need to have, is to really to be able to empathetic, to look at things from other people's point of view. And we believe that AI is pushing us toward that, because AI don't do things like that. AI doesn't have that kind of intelligence. AI is so good at thinking, and then they can take over a lot of thinking jobs. And eventually probably will be a majority of the thinking jobs. So humans really have to reskill ourselves to be more empathetic, to be able to communicate better, to interact better, and to really see things, feel things from other people's point of view. And we believe that in that case, the feeling economy will be a better world.
So is that a skill that people like me that really struggles with something like that could learn and develop? Can we become better at empathy and feeling, do you think? Or is that something we're going to need AI to assist us with whenever it gets to that point?
I think AI can help. AI does not feel for you, but AI can help you to interact or communicate better. For example, like point out the blind spot, that you never think of things from a different perspective. So by analyzing things and presenting different perspectives to humans. AI can do that very well. And then it can make you feel, oh, I can think that way. I never realized. So it's again like the creativity we discussed earlier. It's not talking about AI become a feeling machine, but AI can help us be more feeling intelligent. We think that is a great potential for AI, and it's also a form for AI and human collaboration.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's
Mhm.
that's kind of like the next frontier, right?
Yes.
How has COVID affected any of this growth in AI? Have you guys seen any? Has it accelerated it with more people working remotely and relying on technology a little bit more, or has it kind of slowed it down because of the impact to the economy?
We see that the COVID really provide a great natural experiment for AI's economic impact.
Hmm.
Initially, and even now, we see we have to do everything remotely, virtually, and you can see that without AI, without these smart conferencing technology applications, we cannot do that. So it really helps. AI helps us to connect when we cannot connect physically. So you can see the first level of collaboration. But now we move on to the second level. That is, we are tired of it. We don't want everything to be 100% virtual. Even if AI and technology can help us to achieve 100% virtual, we still desire strongly for human contact. So at this time, AI cannot help. AI become something make us feel, people were saying, of course, we heard that Zoom fatigue, and AI make us even lonelier. So now the current way that I think the challenge we have now is how to use AI, how to use AI to reconnect people physically, because we have the emotional need to see people, to touch people. So that will consider the impact of COVID has two levels. Initially is to facilitate us to be able to connect virtually. But now we need to move to the second level to help us, to help people to be able to connect and interact, not just virtually. Even if it's still virtually, it has to really feel as if it's physically. I think that's what people need to do right now.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely see there's so I teach part-time at Winthrop University in
Mhm,
Rock Hill, South Carolina.
mhm.
And when COVID hit, we were all sent home. And at that time, Winthrop did not teach online classes. They were all in the classroom, very traditional based. Then we switched to all online, and for the following fall semester was also all online. And then there was so many like pushback, like students that wanted things to be online originally were saying, can we do this next semester in the classroom? Can we come back and have like a hybrid model maybe? Because they were missing out on the in the classroom type, the feeling that you get from being in the classroom.
Yeah, yeah. My students ask for the same thing because people just tired of just have meetings all the time using Zoom. And they want to be able to have in-class discussion, and so they will say we will definitely wear mask. We will have a proper distance. They can make all the promises simply because they really want to have physical contact.
Yeah, exactly. And you can, I mean, there's so much more you can pick up too. Like, when you're just doing a Zoom meeting, you only get the really a little bit of the face to face, but mostly it's just the audio. But when you see someone and you can kind of see their body language, you can see how they're slumping in their chairs. You kind of know as a professor how to kind of maybe change what you're saying to excite them a little bit more because people are starting to get bored. But when you're doing it online, it's so difficult because you don't know the reaction. You don't get that feedback.
Yes. And so for that part, feeling intelligence, important thing is multimodal. So you want to be able to see, to hear, to feel, to
Hmm.
touch. It's just not just data. It's not just one dimensional. So I think that's the part when we develop AI, we tend to ignore. And if AI can really someday become really have feeling intelligence, that will be the time that AI can help us to have feeling intelligence instead of now just help us to meet and connect virtually.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Mhm.
So Elon Musk, like several years ago, he had a public statement where he talked about how he had a little bit of fear of AI. And I know when you think back on AI, a lot of the people outside of technology consider AI to be like the Terminator or something like that. This, the singularity of coming together,
Yeah.
and that's not really what we have today. But do you ever think that there's something that humans should be afraid of in the future?
I think what we are really afraid of is really when AI, for example, when we say AI developer from having mechanical intelligence to thinking, to have thinking intelligence, to have feeling intelligence. So what people worry and what we are thinking about, what would be the future when AI really have feeling intelligence? In that case, then AI doesn't have to collaborate with humans. And then one important characteristic of AI is self-learning. So over time, so AI can learn from itself. And self-learning really make AI has the potential to become totally autonomous. It doesn't have to rely on its developer or designer's design. Of course, human will design AI to following our instructions, following our command. But when AI can self-learn, that's what makes AI different from previous generation information technologies. So when I can self-learn, it will go beyond what what developers want AI to do. So yes, there's a potential that AI can go wrong. But for the example, I want to mention because is Mark, I hope I can pronounce his name correctly. I don't like his artificial intelligence, Sophia, because I have one complaint in the book. Why design all this AI as a female? Why? Why it all looks like has a perfect body shape? Wear very tight clothes.
Why do you think
Why?
that is?
Yes, I do really have a complaint, and I think they have negative societal implications
Uh-huh.
because that's still reflect the thinking that men as the designer, men as the computer scientist, and the female as the output, as the product. That should not be the case.
Mhm.
So that's my
Um,
complaint.
no, I get that totally. I always thought, I've always wondered why they did make that a female. Why is it, Alexa, and then you have Siri. They're always, kind of a female voice, a female name, and why do you think that is? Do you think it's because more people would adopt that, or just because the developers are male? More likely more prominent to be a male because of the way gender is in technology today.
I think both factors contribute to that. For example, like a chatbot or the personal assistant, the female
Mhm.
voice comes naturally. That when we ask questions, female voice make us feel more comfortable to ask because it's not that you are asking for a doctor's advice. In that case, you probably want to use a male voice. But for personal assistant, it tends to feel that make you feel more comfortable to interact, to ask questions, less intimidating. So that is for a practical purpose. But I think definitely also reflect um, the fact that most of the computer scientists are men, and they naturally just imagine that if there's an AI regarded as embedded or embodied, they will look like this kind of supermodel females, and that really make me feel uncomfortable.
Mhm. Yeah,
It tends to reproduce. You tend to reproduce the stereotype we have in a society, and we should not reproduce it. We should include the inclusiveness. If AI
mhm.
can do us good, and we want to do that instead of enhance that.
Yeah, I always thought it should be kind of more genderless.
Yes, but now
More
it's
like
really
an
you
a
can
I
see
was gonna say more like an
most of
alien.
them.
You see aliens, they're always just genderless.
Yes, actually that is good.
All right, I think this has been a great conversation. How can people find out more about the feeling economy and learn more about the book and maybe pick it up when is it coming out? It's not out yet, is it?
I think it should be out anytime, and now it is pre-order on Amazon.com. It's not
Okay.
a self-help book. That's I want to
Right.
emphasize. It's an AI's economic impact book.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'll link that up in the show notes, and people can get that at Amazon, or you can go to geekleader.com and click through for that. And again, it is an economic book on the impacts of AI. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed that episode, please leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. I'd greatly appreciate that. And also, don't forget to check out merch. We have some t-shirts that I've designed that are on at geekleader.com. You can click on the merchandise section there and check that out. And also, don't forget about the books from our guests. So if you like this guest and other guests that have written books, please go ahead and check that out at geekleader.com. I would greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure they would too.